Michael Brown was nominated by President Bush to a number of Homeland Security positions and twice confirmed by the Senate.
Earlier this evening, I spoke with Mike Brown, the director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency. He's coordinating disaster relief of a dozen federal agencies and the American Red Cross.
All right, former FEMA Director Michael Brown, thank you so much for joining us.
Michael Brown, former FEMA Director. Thank you, Michael, as always.
This portion of the Michael Brown Show on BCR is brought to you by Fire TKO FST, the highly effective, non-pressurized, portable fire suppression tool. Go to www.firetko.com to learn more.
And now, the Michael Brown Show on BCR.
So welcome to this episode of the Michael Brown Show on BravoCharlieReady.com. I'm kind of excited to talk to this. Can I call you a young man, or is that offensive?
I'm still young. It's okay.
Yeah, I know. You're still young and I'm still old. So
I can rent a car. So it's a positive. I can rent a car, so I'm not that young.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Can you drink yet?
That's next year. No.
Oh, that's next year. Okay. So I do hate you. I do hate you then. So, I'm talking to Scott Jones, who is the business strategist for all of us at the Blue Cell. And so it's always, I think it's fantastic when we have somebody at the Blue Cell that writes a book, because having written a book myself, I know this is not an easy task, right?
Cool.
So without giving away any state secrets, did you do it all on your own? How'd you do this?
Well, when you're not a famous radio personality, you can't just have someone pen books for you and take credit for it.
I don't know who you're talking to. So.
Well, I've seen so many books like come out from these famous celebrities. I'm like, there's no way you wrote like a piece.
No,
of
of course they didn't. No, they didn't.
You put your name on it. No, I actually wrote the entire thing. It was all me.
How long did it take?
So I started in October and really submitted it in June. Okay. Like 9 months.
All right. Did you have a contract before, or did you submit it and somebody said, "Oh yeah, we like this"?
Yeah. So I was already working with a group that was part of this hybrid publishing model beforehand. So I already knew it was going to get published beforehand. Yes. Good for you. So we've kind of buried the lead here. The name of the book is The Free Agent Mindset. Now I could stop there, but I don't know whether your uncle has told you or not, but I sat down and I'm probably 80% through the book, but here's what really caught my attention: how contrarians are shaping the future of work. Because if I'm anything, I'm a contrarian, total contrarian. So did the title come first or did the book come first? So the book really came first. The original title, The Free Agent Mindset, I think that was around for a significant amount of time. I had come up that early. But the How Contrarians Are Shaping the Future of Work didn't come until, I think, May. So I had I had probably 3 different subtitles before it actually came out.
Why contrarians? Because to me, contrarians, evokes it evokes my entire personality, but it also, to me, kind of evokes your personality too.
Yeah, no, I thought when I was coming up with the word, I was like, I knew shape of work or shaping the future of work was what I needed to. And I wanted to find the best adjective to describe people who are really going against what everybody's else doing. And so you're taught from a young age, hey, go get this job. Hey, work for this company. You'll stay there for a long time. And so people who are doing the opposite of that, Contrarians was just a natural fit.
Did any of your professors, we should also talk about where you've gone to school, but did any of your professors say anything about, Scott, you really are a contrarian? Has that ever happened?
I don't think I've been called a contrarian before. Actually, let me correct that. I can see a couple of classes in my past where I made sure to I stood out in the class for being different than what everybody else says. And sometimes I'm just there to say something that's the opposite of what everybody else is saying, just to piss them off.
This seems to kind of run in the family. Okay, so let's first of all, tell us about your education, because I think that's something that the entire family ought to be proud of. And quite frankly, I'm proud of you for doing it too.
Oh, I appreciate that. So I'm an MBA student at Georgetown University. I'll be finished up this spring, which I'm very excited about. So I live out here in Washington, D.C. What a fun place. Yeah, you know very well. And so, no, it was one of my professors at Georgetown who came up with the idea to kind of write or to create this book writing program. And he got publishers to work with him. And so he was a professor that I had at a class over last summer. And he's approached me and said, hey, what do you think of this? I think this would be some of the conversations we had previously. He said, I think this would be something that you'd be really good at. What do you think? And I was at a point in my life where I was like, you know what? Why not? Like, this sounds really cool. I'd always wanted to, or I'd always thought about writing a book. I don't know if it was something I had set my life aspirations for, but it just, everything fell into place and it was really awesome to do.
It is, because there must be 1,000 people that I hear say, you know, I should write a book. And they never do. They never do it. But you actually did it.
Yeah.
So I think you're owed a humongous bucket of congratulations just for doing it.
I appreciate that, Michael.
No, I'm dead serious.
This portion of the Michael Brown Show on BCR is brought to you by the Blue Cell LLC Training Division. With over 100 courses available within the areas of crisis, consequence, and incident management, the Blue Cell has online, virtual live, or in-person options. Go to www.thebluecell.com/training to sign up today.
There's a couple of chapters I want to delve into a little bit, but for those that are listening, what are the 3 main takeaways that you want people to know from this book?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the first takeaway is that there is this trend that's part by individuals themselves, but also coming from companies and employers that has either forced or encouraged people to start going out on their own. And so if it's something that catches people off guard a few years down the road, they're going to be in a negative spot. I would say the second thing is that AI is here to come around and stay.
Right.
And if you're in an area that's susceptible to AI and your position may get lost from it, that's something you need to be thinking about right now. So it's coming within the next few years if it hasn't already. And then finally, that you can do it. And I know it's really scary and it sounds super risky for people to say, you know, I'm going to put all the faith in myself and go out on my own. There's a lot of, and this isn't any knock to anybody in the book, but fairly normal people who have made that decision to themselves and said, you know what, I'm going to take my career in my own hands and do it myself. And so you can do it.
Before I go to one of the chapters, let's focus on that a second, because, and I forget which chapter it is, but you talk about, you know, you're taking a risk on yourself. You're betting on yourself when you go out and do this. I think you said that in so many words.
Yeah.
What do you say to people that, and I don't think you have to be an entrepreneur, and I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you have to be an entrepreneur. I don't think you have to believe that you're going to be the next Steve Jobs or, you know, the next Jeff Bezos or anything else. You can carve out your own little niche somewhere, and whatever your measure of success is, well, that's great for you, but you have to go do it. So when you say people have to bet on themselves and they have to make that leap, in your words, what are you saying to people?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think you're right. There's a reason we talk about Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs, because that's who they are, one of a kind, right? Like very few people are able to make those type of companies and make them work like that. And so when we talk about just how we want to organize our careers, putting the onus on yourself to just say, you know what, I'm going to be responsible for my paychecks, for making money, and for as much hustle as I want to put into it, or as for much, I guess, laziness as I want to put into it some weeks, I want that to be on me, the responsibility. And I think if there's anything that this pandemic has showed, it's that companies, they say that they have your back and they're looking out for you. But when push comes to shove, they'll let you go. And if you're not ready for it, like, it's going to be a problem for you. So in this pandemic, millions and millions of people who have now become freelancers, whether they were forced to or whether they saw an opportunity to. And for so many people just saying, you know what, I trust myself to make the right decisions, and I don't want my life, my livelihood, my family in the hands of a company that I don't trust right now. And people don't trust companies the way they used to.
And even rightly so. I mean, I don't know of anybody. I think my dad was the last one that started out a business that he started with 3 guys in high school. And that's where he ended up. I mean, he died working on that job. Nobody does that anymore.
Yeah, nobody.
But in the book, you talked about, you also use the phrase that when the alarm clock goes off at 9 o'clock, some people wake up and they're in a rush because they got to get dressed and they're late. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? But if you're doing this, if you're freelancing or you're working in the gig economy, and is that still the phrase? Is that still the phrase to use, or have we moved on to a new phrase yet?
Yes, I think the gig economy has gotten such a negative rap, just from what it's been spun to. I mean, most people associate it, and that's one of the differentiations I make within the book is when you talk about gig workers or really the gig economy, you think Uber, you think Postmates, and that type of livelihood of, I mean, people have a negative association because they're not high paying. There's really no benefits to them, and they're really temporary jobs. But there's a lot of really good things about that too, is there's a lot of people who find themselves in troubling situations that are suddenly able to at least get some income coming in.
Some income, right.
Whereas when you think about like more of the professional services, freelancers, the people who are really getting paid quite a bit of money, and there's plenty of people who make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just working for themselves with their own skills. And so that's why I tried to use more of independent worker or freelancers, but even freelancer, they all have their own connotations to them, which has made it really difficult for everybody to really establish anything about this area, because if you look at one article, it's got a totally different meaning for one word than another article. So there's not really this concrete definitions of things.
Okay. Well, I got off track, which is not unusual for me, but let's go back to the alarm clock goes off at 9 o'clock. You realize you're late. You can either rush to get dressed and go into that corporate job, or you can make yourself a cup of coffee, like me, grab a Diet Coke, kind of read the news, and then go down to your office and start doing your job, doing your work. But you and I both know that takes discipline.
That's hard. It's hard work. And that's something that I really wanted to throw in there too, because when people have that, when they're not used to having it all relying on them. So if you've been, let's say, working at a job where you're expected to be there at 8 o'clock for years, and then you finally get that freedom to, you know what, I can do whatever I want in the morning, and these are the projects that I have to get done by certain points, but really I get to make the call on how long they're going to take and when I'm going to do them. It's a lot of responsibility for people if you haven't had a lot of responsibility before. So it can be frightening. And then next thing you know, I mean, so many of us are just great procrastinators, and things catch up on you, then you're overstressed, and then it's almost too much stress. So it's really measuring how much of your own life that you can put in your own hands and how comfortable you are with that, because there's a lot of ambiguity to deal with.
Want to keep up with Michael Brown and his various shows? Find him on Spreaker, Michael Brown Unplugged, or on iHeartRadio. You can also stream his daily AM radio shows on KHOW and KOA.
I'm going to, instead of burying the lead on this question, I'm going to tell you where this question's going, but I want to jump back to chapter 5 before we go to that question. And the question I'm going to ask you after you describe for me chapter 5 is, you talked about, corporations that are, because of the pandemic or for other reasons, they figured out that, these 50 jobs are really, we can actually get by without these 50 jobs. Or we can furlough these 50 people and cut their benefits and save some money. But we really need that engineer to do some stuff, but we can hire him back as a contractor or a freelancer or whatever else. Still, the freelancer's still making good pay. He's just not getting the benefits, and the company's saving money, and they're actually probably, in my guess, getting more work done. They're actually getting more stuff done. So I want to ask you about if someone finds themselves in that position, what should they do? But before we get to that question, in chapter 5, you say, I'm sorry, because I had to read this chapter a couple of times.
It's a fun chapter.
Bring your passion, but don't follow it. Okay, so is that because my passion is always that I wanted to be a first baseman in Major League Baseball, but I'll never do that? Is that what you're talking about, or are you talking about something different?
No, it's along those lines. Is so many times you talk about, okay, so when people talk about find your passion, follow your passion, and then that's what's going to be motivating to you. Eventually, that passion for whatever work you're doing runs out, and then it just becomes work again. And so then what you've done is you've made it so you're still working and you've got to do your job, but then now you don't even feel as good about your passion as you used to. I have a lot of friends in the nonprofit space who kind of can agree to that. Is um, you're very passionate about like the project at hand and what the nonprofit's goals are. However, as soon as it comes down to, okay, we got to do the accounting for the month, like you're suddenly you're not there. And so what's important is to understand, okay, I know the overlying theme of what I really like doing and what I'm passionate about. However, I know that every element of that is not for me too, and really understand what's the things that you like doing, and then finding a way to match that up with what you're, like I said, what you're passionate about.
Is that what steps do you give people? Because again, I know that my passion is baseball and I love baseball, but I'll never be a first baseman, and I get that. But I also kind of know what my passion is.
Yeah.
And so I've tried to, my career has kind of been focused around what my passion is. And unlike some people that, that I went to law school with that have just practiced law and they've just been on this straight line forever, I've done this zigzag,
Yep.
always just going from one thing to another. But how do people who've never been on that zigzag, how do they take that first step to say, okay, I'm good at this, I really like this, and I think I can make some money at it?
Yeah, so that's the first part of what you just said was the key, is what am I actually good at? Like, and what can I make a career out of? So, I mean, I love talking, right? But am I the most interesting person like to make a career out of it? Or I love baseball. Like, can I make a career out of playing baseball anymore? No. And unfortunately, that's a hard realization a lot of people don't realize right away or take a long time to realize. And so really taking a step back and try to get out of your emotions and say objectively, okay, what am I actually good at? And especially when you are deciding to go on your own, like really look at, okay, what skills do I have that are applicable to multiple industries, to applicable to multiple businesses that I can actually make a business out of. Otherwise, if you're just going to be subjective to one type of specific goal with one business in mind, you potentially are going to put yourselves out there just for failure. And so really stepping back, being objective about it is important.
So how does that fit in with being a contrarian?
Yeah, well, the contrarian whole part about being a contrarian is just the overlying view of that you are one of the 60 million people out of the hundreds of millions of people in the United States who, instead of going to your corporate job every day, have taken the step back and said, you know what, I'm going to put this on myself. And so those are the people who have said, I'm good at these skills. I know that there is a market for these skills and that I can make money and live the life I want to live with what I'm doing, and not have to go show up to my 9-to-5 job every day.
So the book is called The Free Agent Mindset, How Contrarians Are Shaping the Future of Work. Let me just put it up here on the screen so everyone can see it. And I assume you know what line you're supposed to use when I say, where can people find the book?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's on the NIM store, nimstore.com. You can also find it from the bluecell.com as well. But there's signed copies there. So definitely take advantage of that. You can't get signed copies anywhere else. So.
All right, good. And then where else can you get it?
You can also get it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or anywhere
Wherever
else.
books are sold.
Yeah, exactly.
Wherever books are sold. Any close, anything that you wanted to add that I haven't covered?
Well, I think
by the way, let me just say before you answer that question,
yeah.
the way you've written, I read it both for the substance, but as a true confession, I also read it as a lawyer and, a guy that loves English and all of that sort of stuff. You write very well. I mean, it flows easy. And I think the way you've structured the paragraphs and everything, touche, good for you.
Well, I appreciate that. I know I've started way too many books in my life that I never finished because you get lost in these long paragraphs and long books, and I was hoping not to have something like that. But I just wanted to have a conversation with people. I think that's what I always wanted to when I was writing is, okay, if I was just sitting down talking to somebody, how would this conversation sound like? What would be coming through their mind as I was saying what I'm saying? And so that's really how I wanted to write it. And I had a lot of help with my editors and really nailing down how it was. But yeah, that's just how I like to write.
Good. Well, you've done an excellent job. So let me go back to my closing question that I always ask every witness in a deposition, which is there anything that you thought I asked that I didn't ask, or you're hoping I asked that I didn't ask, or anything else that you want to add before we finish?
Well, you're starting to get into like talking about the government and how it's being affected, or how it's with this type of industry or with this type of workers, how it's handling it. And I think that's really important. And that is chapter 4 or 5. They always blended in my head. Right. And with the government, it's amazing how much change could happen over the next 10 years, depending on a few different things of what they end up doing. In California right now, there's laws being enacted really to take aim at Uber and Lyft about gig workers. And if some of those laws are adopted across the country, you could basically throw this book away and say, we're good. Never mind. So it's important for people to know that if they really do value the freedom to really go on their own and don't want to make lives really difficult for companies to hire contractors, because as soon as it gets more difficult to be a contractor or to hire contractors as a company, you're no longer going to do that. You're going to make sure that everybody you hire is under your own umbrella, and that's just bad for everybody, because that's just more expensive labor. That's just a less freedom for a lot of workers. And so I think that would be a really negative thing if that happened. But at the same time, then we have to deal with how 45, 50 million people just go on unemployment after a pandemic hits and nobody has health insurance, and right during a pandemic. So there's a lot at stake there. And I think that's one of my favorite chapters that I talk about, is really how some solutions that we could actually take care of. And portable benefits is something that gets thrown out there. So it's something to look at. But it'll be interesting to see how the government responds to this pandemic, how they start using AI to really start planning. And I was thinking about FEMA earlier today, since this is emergency preparedness is. I mean, FEMA, I was looking into their use of artificial intelligence, and it sounds like they put a couple programs out there, and we'll see what the results end up being about trying to plan better for when emergencies happen and where they're going to happen, which is obviously a great first step. But then how they use their force, I think that's going to be what the really interesting part. And I know they have some part-time workers or the reserves.
They have
really interesting to see.
They have tens of thousands of reserve workers. Right.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how they end up using AI and technology to really get them into the best spots at the best times. And hopefully it just makes for a more efficient government. I mean, that's probably just too idealistic, though, because
no, I think that's absolutely reasonable. And while I may be a little cynical about that, nonetheless, it is something we have to strive for. We should strive for that, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, The Free Agent Mindset, How Contrarians Are Shaping the Future of Work by Scott Jones, who is our business manager at the Blue Cell. Scott, thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Michael.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you.
This portion of the Michael Brown Show on BCR is brought to you by the Free Agent Mindset publication by Scott Jones. If you think that going out on your own and being self-employed is the riskier option in life, think again. Go to Amazon or www.thenimsstore.com and click on Software and Publications for more information.
The Blue Cell and the Michael Brown Show on BCR thank the following advertisers and collaborators: